went down. Okay, so we all remember about, October of 2008, probably mid-2008 more, when we started to notice, hey, they won't let me take any more out of my home equity line, or whatever happened when the prices began to come to the halt of society, because the halt of the market came long before any of us realized it was there. We just continued to behave as if it hadn't happened. So the very first thing that they do is we have this halt in real estate prices, and everybody's afraid, right? I mean, who remembers in 2008 when that started changing, being a little bit afraid? Saying, holy crap, I owe $250,000 on a condo. This might not be a good thing. Let me think about this for a second. And that's when it began. So the very first thing that was ever launched to us, and who's ever played a sport here? Who's an athlete, played some sports? Okay, so do you remember, so I'm a volleyball player. And I give this as an example because this is how humans operate. When we do something new, the first thing we do is usually what we hold on to, right? If anyone here golfs, does anyone golf? So like your golf swing your first time is important, right? Because if you mess up that swing and you learn it that way, it is going to be so hard to do it differently. So very first swing that everybody had was a principal reduction. Because does anybody even remember, who's not in the industry, like what the particulars were of the Hope for Homeowners plan? Like people don't even remember. They remember there was $750 billion, and they remember we were supposed to get some help. However, they usually don't remember any more than that, and that's sad. That is a lot of money that was printed and spent for us to not even know why they did it. And that's how inundated we are with information. It's a pretty big deal what they were going to spend $750 billion on, and you know what? Nobody ever knows. Maybe once every 10 times I do this, does anybody ever say, oh yeah, that Hope for Homeowners program. So the very first thing that we were bought into was Hope for Homeowners. And so the Hope for Homeowners plan was part of the Troubled Asset Release program, and was supposed to refinance homes to today's value. Remember that? So you were supposed to be able to go in and essentially short refinance. You were supposed to be able to refinance to, like, I think it was 97% LTV, and if you sold the house within a year, you'd owe 50% of your equity to the government or whoever, and if it was in the second year, you'd owe 40%, third year 30%, and so on and so forth until it was yours free and clear. That was a great idea. Do you know how many people ever got the Hope for Homeowners refinance modification thing?
Qualified.
Zero. Zero. And what it was a dressed up way for the banks to pretty much take over. You know what I mean? Let's be honest right now. You take a look at this country and what's going on, and not getting into the politics. However, a lot of what owns a lot of what's going on right now and controls a lot of it is the banks. And so they were given a lot of power at this time because, you look at economy and business, and who's ever been an independent, worked for yourself, had a business? People in this room, yes? No? Maybe? Okay, so when a market goes down, what happens? Something else comes up and it ends. You know what I mean? Like when modifications stop happening, we can't just continue to force modifications because they won't be happening anymore. So something fell called the banks. That's what happened when these foreclosures happened. They fell. And so the government caught them. So the $750 billion program, Hope for Homeowners, that bought every single one of you into an idea that one day your principal was going to magically be reduced, never happened. It was simply a facade formed so that that money could be given to the banks. So the banks were then given. So what happened, the reason they didn't do a lot of modifications is they took that first half of the money, and the largest banks got the first half, so like $375 billion-ish. Well, what did they do? Does anyone know what they went out and did?
They invested it.
Yeah, they invested the money. They bought smaller banks who didn't get helped. Okay, so they took them out, and they went ahead and, they got, they went and bought assets from the FDIC. So when the FDIC went and, foreclosed on or, took over a bankrupt company, they went ahead and gave they bought those assets. They picked those up for pennies on the dollar. That's what they did with the money. They didn't hire staff, train them to modify loans, develop programs, allocate funds for you, because you're still paying them. You're already a performing asset. Why on earth are they going to give you any more money? See, that's what we have to understand and what people miss, and it's very sad but true. You are not viewed as a human being to any banker in this country right now. So if you think you are mistaken. It is a number, it is an equation, it is their benefit. Okay, short, you know, when they do a short sale, they get you off their books. They don't have to deal with you anymore. They get whatever they get covered from the government or the FDIC or whatever arrangement they have. They get paid off. It's off their books. They're moving on. They're no longer on the hook for that money. They win. Or they modify your loan. They keep your principal the same. You're paying 2% interest, but they're still yielding 7, 8, 9%, so they're happy. That's how the equations mostly work out. And unfortunately, we're all caught on a principal reduction, though, because that's the first thing. And do you know how many programs have come out since then that allude to a principal reduction, but it's never happened? So they talked about it with NACA. That was a big one that they talked about it with. And guess what? Once in a while, somebody did. However, that is not the normal thing that happens, but that's what people are holding out for. So Fannie and Freddie got the rest of the money, and do we all know what Fannie and Freddie did with the rest of the money? Well, they bought the bad assets that Bank of America and all those other banks had on their books that they wanted gone so that they could have more money to buy the good ones or the cheaper ones and perform more. So that's what happened with all the money. And meanwhile, we're all still sitting here crossing our fingers. I mean, who's still hoping that one day they're going to come up with a principal reduction program and it's all going to be better? I mean, people are still hoping for it. There's absolutely no evidence that it would ever actually occur because nothing like that has happened thus far. So, those banks, they bought a lot of assets from the FDIC. They got them for 0% interest. They got compensated drastically for what they paid for them. So just to give you a really quick example on that would be IndyMac. So, and some of you have seen this example before, however, IndyMac went under and their assets were seized by the FDIC.